to this story making headlines today. Management consulting company Bain Co is winding down its consulting operations in South Africa nearly 3 years after being banned from government contracts. That's due to its involvement in the controversial restructuring of the South African Revenue Service. If you'll remember, that was the topic of the Nugent Commission, and there was very damning findings made both at the Nugent Commission and the Zondo Commission. Let's talk about this more with Zen Mathe, who's an investigator at Open Secrets. Very good evening, Zen. Welcome to the Power Business.
Great. Good evening to your viewers. Thank you for having me.
Can you walk us through Bain Co's decision to wind down their consultancy operations in South Africa? The Open Secrets organization or publications have been very critical of their role in South Africa's revenue agency with the report in 2021 calling Bain Co the KGB of consulting. So this must be seen as essentially a success story for Open Secrets.
Yeah, I think as you've mentioned, we've been looking into this and doing this work since the commencement of the Zondo Commission, and a lot of our reporting at that time came out before the damning findings of the Zondo Commission, but after the Nugent Commission. And I think it goes without saying that it is a victory to see a major, powerful corporation essentially deciding that crime does not pay in this country, and in the way that corporate actors go about doing their business. I mean, we focus on Bain and consulting firms in our work, but essentially we focus mainly on private sector actors and powerful corporations. And I think this is a pattern that we say and we put forward is an issue when we're doing our work. A lot of the focus often goes to the state and individuals, and we say that there's a broader, important player here with powerful corporations not only being part of state capture and corruption, but enabling it. And I think in the instance of Bain & Company, this is precisely what we found in its conduct with SARS. And I think the findings, as you mentioned, of the Zondo Commission were very damning and followed the findings of the Nugent Commission. And the Zondo Commission found that the looting at SARS was facilitated by Bain, amongst others. And as much as all of this has been going on, there is an important element to be shown that this is at public cost. If you are dismantling and hollowing out a state institution, which for us, SARS and our tax agency has been amongst the most reputable in the world, until you have this targeted offensive with Bain and the collusion of the former elite of Tomiyana as well at that, with a targeted offensive, premeditated plans to dismantle SARS and to capture it. And when we're talking about the estimated cost of that, the revenue loss, we found that was, and the Zondo Commission also reported of what we can find and we can record in the numbers, even though that's often difficult, about 100 billion rands worth of revenue loss. And I think that's the broader discussion here. So when we're talking about, and I think the difficulty with the issue of Bain was that they didn't really take accountability. I mean, they paid back the money, which the contract that they earned from they work at SARS, not earned, but was granted through this collusion and conception and capture. They paid back the money of about 200 million rand, and almost said they were an unwitting, framed themselves as this unwitting pawn in a political game that they were not wary of or a part of. And I think that is then the big thing. And when you're talking about, okay, yes, you paid back the money, it's 100 million, that does not speak to the cost that you have wreaked to the public of South Africa. And I think in South Africa's social spending on our social protection mechanisms was hindered. I mean, and this is, state capture and COVID and essentially a time when we really needed our tax agency to be at its best to help the people of South Africa to do what we needed to do. And here we have, at that period, and an essential one at the time, a hollowed out former, reputable state institution, which we don't have many of.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting that you mentioned just how important the revenue agency is, especially for a country like South Africa, a developing country where so many people rely on state services and to be able to deliver those credibly. Let's just go back to 2013, where much of this first started, where the Bain partner, Vittoria Mazzoni, who then disappeared off to Italy on some mysterious medical excuse, essentially met Tom Moyane and the then SARS commissioner, or I believe they were going to put him forward as SARS commissioner. It's been at least over 12 years now. Let's just talk about some of the most difficult or some of the most damning findings by the two commissions, Nugent and Zondo.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think both the Nugent Commission was doing that work preliminarily to the Zondo Commission and did make damning findings. And I think you speak of Vittoria Mazzoni, who was the head of Bain South Africa at the time, who then did go off to Italy after that. So and escaped accountability at the time that the Nugent Commission was happening, and the Nugent Commission had called Vittoria Mazzoni to account for Bain's conduct and to give the details. He, we found, not only wasn't, telling the truth when he did engage with the commission, but then when he was called to engage with the commission again, he was sick and unavailable, and then he left the country. Mm-hmm. And I think following on from that, with damning findings from the Nugent Commission, the Zondo Commission was able to do further digging. And I think there is something important here about accountability and the way in which we can continue to learn from each other to hold powerful corporations to account. The Zondo Commission made findings that that confirmed that the Bain and Vittoria Mazzoni and former soon-to-be SARS Commissioner Tom Moyane and the political elite at the time met, at least at a minimum, what is provable, and we've reported on this, and the Zondo Commission made findings on this, has 17 meetings.
Wow.
And 17 meetings prior to the time that Tom Moyane was elected and put in place as the head and chief of SARS, and then subsequently thereafter very quickly hired Bain to essentially, I guess, put their plan forward, and not necessarily as this objective consulting firm to advise on the best route forward, but essentially to unfold the plan. And I think our investigations over time also were supported by the findings of the Zondo Commission, but I think people can refer to our previous investigations and our more recent ones that really want to speak to uncovering the role of consulting firms and private sector actors in corruption and state capture and just the way of doing business. We have internal emails showing the discussions that happened there before. We have the findings of the Zondo Commission. And so with that, the damning findings of the Zondo Commission, made a recommendation that there should be an investigation into Bain and its conduct of SARS. But on top of that, that the state should ban doing business with Bain for a minimum of 10 years. And I think, sorry.
And congratulations to the state, because I know that there's controversy in South Africa where the commissions of inquiry are actually effective. But in the case of Bain and within the case of SARS, which has leapfrogged its performance, these commissions were actually successful.
Yes. And I think this is an important part of the conversation, is that, yes, the commissions cost money, but this is money that doesn't really hold water to the money that's been stolen before the fact and the damage that has been done to the public before the fact. And I think the public is owed, in a democratic, constitutional South Africa, both information and also efforts to protect the Constitution and the rights of the people of South Africa. And so I think when we're looking at that, and now here we find Bain, and I don't know quite what was the final nail in the coffin that made Bain take this decision, but I think one of the main things was the ban of Bain following the Zondo Commission's recommendation from doing business with the state. And arguably, yes, South Africa wasn't necessarily quick to do that. It was first a ban from the UK that was spurred on from the findings of the Zondo Commission, and then South Africa followed thereafter to do the ban. And I think there is something there that can be learned in watershed moments such as the Zondo Commission. And I think it remains particularly important. We can see years later that there are powerful ways in which accountability mechanisms and speaking that do have fruition and do have success. I think there is a clear message in the case of Bain that South Africa isn't the playground for powerful institutions to do as they will at great public cost.
Well, I hope we're sending that message loud and clear, because justice may take a while, but at least in the case with Bain and with SARS, it has been served to some extent. Thanks very much, Zen Mathe, for giving us all the details. She's an investigator at Open Secrets.